Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of The Guys Who Stare at Stats. Kate Kennedy with you alongside Tyler Riggs. It is still March, and you could definitely tell it is mad because OBS crashed right before we tried to get the video started today. So I apologize for any technical things here at the beginning. When your computer restarts and then OBS crashes, that makes for a very fun time, Tyler, especially 15 minutes before we're about to record. But nevertheless, the Sweet 16 finally here, Elite 8 as well. So before OBS officially dies on me, let's try to get through this real quick. What do you say, Tyler?
Sounds good. I need a second crack at this after my horrible performance. I did label my bracket appropriately, questionable at best, and it is indeed very questionable.
Yeah, I mean, what were you saying? It was what, the 20th percentile or
Oh,
something
it's bad. It's ranked
ridiculous?
like just above 20 million. It's bad. It's not
Okay,
good. Let's
well,
just say I'm not winning any pools this year,
you're not
boys.
winning a pool. Well, ESPN does offer the second chance bracket. That's what we've got
Well, and I'm
pulled
filling
up
out
here.
live as we're doing this.
You're filling it out
Do
live as we're doing it. Okay, well, let's get right
yeah.
into it. Starting with the South region, Auburn and Michigan going at it. This is a game that, it feels it has some intriguiness to it, Tyler. I mean, this is an Auburn team that they've shown their ability to steamroll people at times this year. They've been the best team in the country, I would say, for the majority of the season. But I think the more intriguing side of this, and I don't know if you'll agree with me, we know what Auburn's capable of. It's what will this Michigan team come out and look like? We talked about them, of course. If you watched the March Madness video we did, 26th in Ken Palm, an efficient defense, but they turn the ball over a lot. They'll have the size advantage over most people with Vladislav Golden and Danny Wolf, two 7-footers. Auburn, how they're going to try to match up to that, I think, is really the key to this game. But at the end of it, I think it doesn't really matter. This still feels like Auburn's bracket to win. I like Auburn to move on.
Yeah, I'll eat it down. I was definitely wrong on Auburn. They've shown, more metal. Rebounded well. Sometimes a little bit of a losing streak like that to end the season. We talked about they maybe didn't finish the regular season as strong as you would have liked. From a one seed, hadn't mattered. They've turned it on. Credit to Bruce Pearl. I'm with you. I think Auburn takes this. Michigan probably hangs around a little bit. Obviously, that size is gonna be tough to deal with, but I do think Auburn solves the puzzle.
Yeah, but then you have Ole Miss and Michigan State as the 6-2 matchup. See, and this is why I wish we had Andrew here because Andrew called that Ole Miss was going to do this. I wanted to see where he'd take it from here now that we've gotten it back to it. But at the end of the day, this is a Michigan State team that I think is continuing to click. We talked about, Chris Beard, one of those guys that always seems to find a way in March. Tom Izzo. I mean, one of those guys that, he had some struggles in the past few Marches here. Don't get me wrong, but I think this is a Michigan State team that is well rounded. They're greatly put together. I mean, Jace Richardson, one of the fun stories for this Michigan State team. Jackson Kohler, a great rebounder. Ole Miss will have their talent, of course. You have Sean Padulas, Jamin Breakfields. But I just like Michigan State. I've liked them all year. I think we get the chalk of the Elite Eight in the 1-2.
Yeah, as much as I, like Ole Miss and in terms of how fun they've been, I'm with you. Michigan State, Tom Izzo has found a way to kind of turn back on a little bit after, like I said, that little bit of a lull. And the big thing for this team is that they're getting production from everybody right now. That's really been kind of the thing. You saw it in that win over New Mexico. They flexed that type of muscle where, you couldn't really focus in per se on one guy. So many different buys that can hit you. And I think they continue that here against Ole Miss.
Yeah, and then that gives you an Auburn, Michigan State Elite Eight. And Tyler, I mean, I was chalk the first time around on this. My opinion has not changed on it. I still like Auburn to make the Final Four.
Man, this is a tough one. I mean, what a coaching matchup here between these teams, two well balanced teams. I think Auburn has the juice. They've shown it. They've been there. I think one of these two coaches, though, man, what a good story for them to get to the Final Four. Two of the older coaches around, if you will. Yeah, I think Auburn should be a fun game. I think Auburn pulls it out.
No, it should be a great game. I mean, these are two great defensive teams. These are two incredibly talented teams. Janai Broom, of course, Chad Baker Mazzara, Miles Kelly, Todd Pettiford. I could go through the whole list like I did the first time around, but I don't really need to. everyone has seen this Auburn team and knows what they're capable of. Michigan State, super capable of what as well. I don't want to put them down or anything like that, but just
Oh, sure.
Auburn
Yeah.
feels on a mission this year. And that moves
Yeah.
us over to the East, where you talk about teams on a mission. It's Duke. Duke without Cooper Flag is a great team. You add him back, he got healthy again, and poor everyone that got stuck in their way. Poor Baylor, especially. That was a game where Baylor put up a good fight for about 10 minutes, and then Duke showed you what they're capable of, started beating them up and down the floor. They get Arizona, who Caleb Love, we talked about him, a bit of a wild card. When he's on, not many teams could beat Arizona. When he's off, several teams could beat him. Caleb Love's going to have the game of his life if Arizona gets close to beating Duke.
Yeah, and I don't know if it's capable. I think Duke right now, man, my goodness, you put it best. Uh, when Cooper Flag's where he's at right now, this team is just on another level. They're on a mission, like you said. I'm not seeing very many teams that can deal with what Duke's got right now. I'm taking Duke.
Yeah, I am as well. I mean, you're going to hear this a lot as we go through this. I mean, really quick, just I'm not changing a lot of my predictions from if you saw the first video to now. Most of this is what I kind of thought would happen. So we'll just kind of keep on going down the line here. BYU and Alabama. This is one of the few that I expected this to go a little differently. I had the chaos. I believed in VCU. VCU failed me. I got the Wisconsin wouldn't make it here, though. I mean, that was the big one. Could Wisconsin get there or not? They couldn't. But I felt like no matter who got here to play Alabama, Alabama's just too talented. Their pace is going to be great. An elite offense. This will be a firefight between BYU and Alabama. I mean, two great guards, Mark Sears, Richie Saunders. This is going to be fun. This is going to be up-tempo basketball. This is my kind of game. But at the end of the day, I like Alabama to get the job done.
This is definitely going to feel like, uh, dare I say, an NBA type game. You talk about the pace, you talk about the up-downess. Heck, you saw Bama get into the firefight a little bit with Robert Morris there in the first round, right? So, that being said, BYU right now, Cade, that's where I think we have our first disagreement. There's something
Okay.
about this BYU program. They've got the number one player in the country coming in next year. Got a lot of hype behind them. That win over Wisconsin was impressive
It
because
was.
I was very high on that Wisconsin team, as you know. I I think that sold me on BYU. I think they've got the firepower to keep up with and beat Alabama to get themselves on to face Duke.
Okay, there we go. I will not judge, but I will say I will give a fun stat for this game though. These are two of the best teams in terms of 2-point shooting. Tyler, I mean, 1 point separates them. Alabama shoots 59% from inside the arc. BYU shoots 58%. These are two of the
Mhm.
best inside shooting teams you're going to find in America. You talk about the fun pace they have. That's going to be an amazing game. But I think we'll both agree that whoever gets to play Duke, it's not going to end well for them. I think we can both agree that Duke will get the job done. Surely, right?
Yeah, I mean, you hate to go chalk again, but again, Duke's a machine. They are. I had them in my original bracket going to the championship game. Especially when they're healthy, it's just good luck. Good luck to you.
Yeah, and then we move down to the West. Florida taking on Maryland. Maryland, the big story. Derek Queen, phenomenal player, gets the buzzer beater shot to beat Colorado State. As much as a lot of people didn't want to see Maryland here, you wanted to root for the chaos. You wanted to see someone be Cinderella. Unfortunately, no. And Florida, battle tested Florida, having to go through UConn team that would not go down quietly, led for a decent chunk of that game, and then Florida finally woke up at the end, was able to figure things out a bit. Florida had played a game or two like that earlier this year where they just did not wake up until the final, 8 minutes of the game. But that 8 minute stretch was all they needed. Florida, an immensely talented team, talked about it multiple times, an elite offense, a great defense. Walter Clayton Jr., 17 forward 4. Elijah Martin, Will Richard, great team Florida has. Maryland has the best nickname in college basketball right now in the Crab Five. But unfortunately, Tyler, cool nicknames do not get you to the Elite Eight. I like Florida.
Yeah, I'm in agreement with you. Cool nicknames are great, but when you face a great team, that's tough to overcome. And I think that game for Florida against UConn was exactly what they needed going into the Sweet 16. Right, you took out the back-to-back champs, and you say, "Hey, this wasn't the same UConn team it's in the past." Doesn't matter. You know what that does for a kid's confidence when you say, "Hey, we just beat the best." That's been the team the last couple of years in college basketball. You took them out, and you did it in a gutsy way, right? Like I said, had to fight through some adversity, had to wake up a little bit, and they did it. I think this Florida team carries that confidence against Maryland. Fun game, but ultimately give me Florida to pull it out.
You talk about confidence, and this leads great into the next game. Texas Tech and Arkansas, old school Southwest Conference game. And Tyler,
Mm,
maybe the
mhm.
most wacky Cinderella we've had in a long time. 10 seeded Arkansas, a John Calipari coached Arkansas, is the quote
As a dog,
unquote
yeah.
Cinderella of the tournament this year, which is just okay. I mean, I get we have to have someone to be deemed as Cinderella. I don't really know if I talk about an Arkansas team that's getting healthy at the right time. Keep that in mind. Adu Thiero's back. Boogie Fland has been back. This is an Arkansas team that is finally getting healthy. We're finally going to see what Arkansas is supposed to look like the entire season. Could not be happening at a better time for the Hogs. But going up against the Texas Tech team that is a great 3-point shooting team. JT Toppin, of course, is a beast. Puts up 18 and 9. Darian Williams, saw him able to play against Drake. I enjoyed my time in Wichita, by the way. This is a Tech team that was incredibly fun to watch. 14, 5, and 4 is what Williams puts up. Chance McMillan, great shooter. Christian Anderson, great shooter. This is a Tech team that will just spread the floor with you and just go off at any different level. I had Texas Tech in the Elite Eight beating St. John's to get there. I think they beat Arkansas, of course.
Oh man, what a matchup this is. This might be kind of the I say most fun. I think this is the most intriguing matchup of the Sweet 16, just because of all the reasons you laid out. Um, the big deal for me is John Calipari's been here, right? And you mentioned this team starting to get healthy. It's is what's happened um, with this team because of the injuries. You've had guys have to step up, fill themselves into different roles. Now that you've got to the point where you're getting some of your superstars back, takes a load off those other guys who've been having to carry the weight. I think that's why you've seen this run for Arkansas is simply because all of a sudden, these guys realize like, okay, I don't have to be the hero. You've got a more balanced approach now to work with because of that. I think the Cinderella run continues. Give me Arkansas over Tech in a fun
Oh
one,
my goodness.
and it'll be Calipari trying to take on Florida and SEC Elite Eight there in the
Okay.
West.
I mean, that would be incredible. But first of all, I mean, just the narrative about that is going to be crazy if Arkansas does pull that off. I mean,
It would.
first of all, especially if a certain game you could look at right across from them in the Midwest goes the way it very well could.
Well,
Boy, would
and
that
that's cool,
start a
man. I've
conversation.
seen this. I've seen this talked about, but Kentucky moves on from Calipari. They're in the Sweet 16. Pope leaves BYU. They're in the Sweet 16. And Calipari comes over to Arkansas. People tell you, especially with the season they've had, oh, it's not going to happen. And he's in the Sweet 16. So it's a true win-win-win for all those programs, right? Like if you told them at the beginning of the year, hey, you're going to get to at least the Sweet 16 and have a shot, they would all very much be happy with it.
Yeah, they would. The only problem, I think, though, is what happens if Arkansas makes it farther than Kentucky does?
Oh
What
boy,
happens
the
then?
conversations,
Because
the
yeah, then we
conversation.
got to start having a conversation about, hey,
Oof.
Calipari still got it. He just didn't, maybe he just couldn't do it at Kentucky. Now he just needed a change of pace. Where's Kentucky go? Obviously, they're going back up. Mark Pope, amazing coach. But Florida, Texas Tech, the way I see it, Texas Tech will provide a great challenge to Florida, but Florida is a great perimeter defense. I think that matches up really good. Who can win that battle on the edge there with Tech and Florida is going to be a lot of fun. This will be two great teams going at it, but at the end of the day, I think Florida is another one of those teams on a mission to make it. And that gives me a third one seed going to the Final Four. I hate being this chalk, Tyler, but that's where we are.
I do too, but I gotta agree with you, man, because it seems like it's a chalk year. You can tell by the seeds. I mean, outside of Arkansas, your lowest seed is a 6 seed in BYU and Ole Miss. Other than that, it's 5 and up. Like, there's no real uh true. I mean, there's no small conference team here, right?
No,
It's
there
all the
isn't.
big dogs, if you will. That's a conversation for a little bit later in this video, but it's a chalk year. I think it doesn't matter who wins out of that Tech Arkansas game. That'll be a fun one. Good narratives coming out of that either way. But I think Florida's too much. I mean, they're just a complete team. Give me Florida to the Final Four against Auburn. What a heck of a Final Four matchup.
Yeah, that'll be a fun one when they meet down in San Antonio. And then last region to talk about, the Midwest, Houston and Purdue. I know people are expecting this to be a pretty one-sided home crowd towards Purdue. It's what happens when an Indiana team is playing in Indianapolis. But I want to get your opinion on this, Tyler, real quick. And I think we'll agree. How do we feel about this being played at Lucas Oil Stadium and not at where the Pacers play? How do we feel about playing basketball games on a football field? Football field?
I mean, that's been the college basketball thing, right? Like they do that. You play on uh, the carrier dome, like you do. That's what they do. Generally, I'm not in favor of it, but to be honest, with the way college sports have been, why not? I mean, you want to have a little bit of that flavor. That's what they do. So, um, I don't mind it. I know why it could rub people the wrong way, but it's a college basketball thing. You go play in these bigger venues, man.
Yeah, I think the difference though between something like the old Carrier Dome, I'm never going to figure out what the new sponsor is. I'm sorry, it's always going to be the Carrier Dome. I guess my
Yeah,
counterpoint to that would be that's something that's been traditional. That's always been set up to hold everything. Where a place like Lucas Oil, you don't have to play it there. Usually, you reserve that for the
correct.
Final Four. You don't play a Sweet 16 and Elite Eight in a venue like that where someone's getting 300 level seats to look down and maybe see what looks like ants out there. I mean, it'll be an interesting venue for sure. I'm not a big fan of it. I think that should be reserved for the Final Four type of deal when you could play, like they're going to do, play it in the Alamo Dome. They could seat 50,000 plus. But at the same time, I get what they're trying to do. They want to get as many people in seats as possible. But it's just the sight lines, Tyler, they're not going to be great. And the fact that someone's going to pay way too much money to go sit and barely be able to see and have to watch the game on a jumbotron when they could have just stayed home.
And hey, I agree with you on that. I can understand why people would be against it. There's no doubt about
Yeah, but either way, back to Houston and Purdue before we go into an entirely different
it.
subject
So,
here. Houston, slower paced team compared to some of the other teams we talked about. Great offense, elite defense. And when I talk about that great offense, they're the second best 3-point shooting team in college basketball in general this year. They can shut people down. They've got a great interior defense. LJ Cryer, Emmanuel Sharp, Milos Uzan, all shooting over 42% from deep this season against the Purdue team. They're a great 3-point shooting team as well. They're a good perimeter defense team as well. Trey Kaufman Wren, 26-2 is what he's been putting up this season. Braden Smith, great. 8 assists on the season for Braden Smith, 16 points. Fletcher Lawyer, 14 points a game. He can shoot it from deep, 46% from beyond the arc. This is a Purdue team that they're going to give Houston a really good challenge like Gonzaga did. I don't know if they'll give them as good of a challenge. I don't think they have the speed or the coaching, dare I say. I'm sorry, I trust Mark Few a little bit more than I do Painter, but I like Houston to move on here. I think when you get into these battles late in the year, this is something I talked about with Andrew a little bit, that these Houston teams in the past, I think, could lose a game like this. But now that Kelvin Sampson, he has that system he has built up, that gritty, tough defense that is so difficult to stop or figure a way out. But now you add that offensive side where everyone can shoot and everyone has a role and knows what they're doing. They're just insanely difficult to beat this year. That's why Andrew has them as his national champion. He thinks this is their special year. I don't know if I'd go that far, but I definitely could see them Elite Eight at the minimum.
Yeah, I think ultimately Houston's got it for that Elite Eight. Here's the stat though that's interestingly provided by ESPN on this. Number ones, in terms of seeds, have lost 3 of the 5 meetings with 4 seeds since 2022. Prior to that, number one seeds 9-0 between 2015 and 2021 against 4 seeds. So what are we seeing here? What are we seeing? I think of the 4 seeds, Purdue's a fun one. They offer a lot, but I do think Houston's just too overwhelming. I do. Better athletes, better fundamentally sound team, like you point out with Coach Sampson and his system. Give me Houston.
Yeah, and it's just, Purdue's a good team, but also I'm a little bit angry that I completely screwed this entire region up. I had Clemson here, and Clemson decided they wanted to not even score 20 points and a half against
Hey, I
McNeese.
was
So,
on the Clemson train too, so
yeah.
I understand you.
Yeah,
Heard
it
it.
was just one of those where it's like, okay, what are we doing here, guys? And then Kentucky and Tennessee, which we were able to get that one a little bit closer. I think everyone had Tennessee getting here. This is a fun Tennessee team to watch. They play at that slow pace as well. Great offense, elite defense. When you look at the Ken Palm ratings, the best perimeter defense in college basketball. You can't even shoot 28% from three against the Vols. That is where they are at defensively. Chaz Lanier, great. 17 points per game, 40% from deep. Zakai Ziegler, 7 assists per game, one of the best passers you will see in the sport this year. And a Kentucky team that, man, they've had their injury problems. But when they've had those stretches, they are a fast team. They're a great offense. They can shoot well. They've got a good perimeter defense as well. They don't force turnovers. But if Otega Owe, Kobe Brea, some of those other guys can get going for Kentucky, they still have that talent. Don't get me wrong. They still have the talent to make a deep run. It's just now you're back in SEC territory. You're playing a team you've already battled with a few times this year. This is going to be, you talk about really fun games. This is going to be right here with it.
Well, and here's the big deal. This was one of the two Sweet 16 games I got right. Florida Maryland was the other in terms of coming into this weekend. So my original pick when I was going through this had Tennessee over Kentucky. Now you look at it, Tennessee's lost twice to Kentucky this season.
They
Did
have.
it within the span of 14 days, right? 5 point loss at home, turn around, lose even bigger on the road by 11. So surely, I think Kentucky could overcome Tennessee one more time, right? I think Tennessee gets revenge here. This is where it's tough to be a good team twice. It's even tougher to beat them 3 times. Tennessee rights the wrongs. They take out Kentucky. And yes, that means I have the story of Calipari going farther than Mark Pope.
Man, I want to disagree with you, but Tyler, I have to keep with the bracket that I had. I can't change my opinion yet. I have to go with Tennessee to beat Kentucky. It's still there on the table. I've not changed my opinion on this. I feel like this is the special year for Tennessee where they can make the Elite Eight and it sets them up in a battle with Houston. So now we have the question, Tyler. Do we go all chalk, super chalk, and have 4 1 seeds in the Final Four still?
Mm.
That is the question. Houston, Tennessee. Look at this, by the way. This would be a top 5 battle if you go by Ken Palm ratings. This would be Houston at 3 versus Tennessee at 5. Talked about the slower paced, great elite defensive teams, really. If you look at their Ken Palm ratings, we talked about a little bit of what both sides can do. They have their good passers, they have their good shooters, but the matchup for this will be on the perimeter. Houston, a team that could shoot it extremely well. Tennessee, a team that can lock you down. Who wins that battle?
Yeah, that's a great question. And, a big note about the Kim Palm ratings. At a pretty high clip, your winner, if you will, the tournament, if you go back and look at the Kim Palm ratings year by year, generally that team is either in or just outside of having a top 10 offense and defensive rating in the country, right? Like that's not fully guaranteed. There's been some exceptions, but the biggest one that stands out is Kimba's UConn team. They got it done when they were only 39th offensively, 10th defensively, though. Outside of that, though, was pretty much within that range. When you're looking at this, um, you look at what Houston has offered 10th offensively, first defensively. You look at Tennessee, 17th offensively, third defensively. So it's battle of defenses, right? Although I think, in my original bracket, I had Houston here. I had Houston Dukes up for a nice battle. But I think this is where the SEC too good. Give me Tennessee to break up the chain of the 1 seeds. We're not going to have 4 1 seeds, Cade. I'll take Tennessee to get past Houston and at least have some lower seed representation in there in the Final Four.
Well, I'm going to throw this back to last year. This was a conversation we had when we did March Madness last year? What was the one thing that you said to me that ended up being true that year and has been true in some of the past few years? Defense travels. That's one thing
Yes.
it does. If you're talking
Yes.
about the best perimeter defense in college basketball, which Tennessee has, you're talking about Houston, which has one of the best 3-point shooting teams in college basketball. These are two, like you said, top three in defensive rating. Houston 1, Tennessee 3. I think this is going to be a slower paced game. I think this is really going to be a chess match. But I feel against all odds, I have to stick with my prediction.
Uh,
Some one seed is going to slip up. I think it's going to be
yes.
Houston.
Oh, and I hate to do that to Houston because I think Kelvin Sampson's a great coach, but
I
of all the
agree.
one seeds, they feel like the most vulnerable, and
Yeah.
that's not a large margin. But I just can't bet against Auburn, Florida, or Duke right now. But I can make a case for Houston tripping just because of what you laid out. Back to what I said last year, that defense, man, you in the tournament, it travels. There's no question.
Yeah, and that's how I feel. Like, I think Houston, if you're telling me of the 4 1 seeds, if I had to pick one that I wanted to win the national title, it would be Houston. But if I have to pick the 1 seed that's probably not going to make it to the Final Four, if I said you have to guarantee 3 of the 4, which one are you leaving out? I feel like I would have to pick Houston just because of their bracket, just because of they're going to have to play either Kentucky or Tennessee. And watching them in person in that environment against Gonzaga, where there was a game they got way too close, way too quick at the end, where everyone started thinking, is Houston really going to blow this? Are we really about to have overtime? Is this what is happening to Houston right now? This looks like a team that, we know they're from the Big 12, which is still one of the best conferences in college basketball. What is going on here? A Gonzaga team that we know is good offensively is pushing them to their limit here. And
Yeah,
I think at the end of the day, Tennessee's not going to play at a breakneck pace or anything like that. But I think Tennessee will kind of have that calmness to them that, okay, if Houston makes a mistake, we know we can capitalize. We know we have the ability to go to work here. And so that brings us to a Final Four with 3 SEC teams. Boy, will people be mad about that if that comes true. After having to hear all year about the SEC is the best conference, and then
oh
people got mad that teams that, oh, well, Texas and Oklahoma and Georgia and all them, they were below 500 in conference play. Conference play doesn't mean anything. I don't know how many times I've had to explain this to people. Committee does not care about that. They just don't. I'm sorry.
yeah.
We have to get over this. This has been a point proven multiple times, but we're beyond that now. So if you get to this type of Final Four, which we both agree is probably we think is going to happen at least. That's why we picked them. Duh. But man, I mean, just going through Auburn versus Florida, what a game that would be. We've seen this play out before. It would be an amazing game. I feel like once again.
Yeah, well, I mean, phenomenal. It's everything you'd want a Final Four matchup. Arguably, probably should be the national championship game. It would feel like that, and ultimate bragging rights for potentially whichever SEC team wins this game.
Yeah, and I mean, you look at the Ken Palm ratings. Florida would be 2, Auburn would be 4. They're considered the weakest of the 1 seeds, which is a bit crazy that they got the number 1 overall 1 seed, but are considered the weakest one if you go by Ken Palm. That's kind of crazy how that played out. But at the end of the day, here, and this was kind of the common consensus, and some people were, not happy with how people felt about this, but I kind of tend to agree with it. When you combine talent with momentum, which is what Florida had, that is a dangerous thing. You give them that confidence of we had a horrible game and we still beat the back-to-back defending champions. Oh boy, this Florida team is primed and ready, I think, to make the national championship game. I have them beating Auburn. Still.
Yeah, I'm in agreement with you. This has the potential to be one of the best Final Four games we've ever seen. just just based off this matchup, it could be dynamite. It could be electric. Uh, yeah, I think Florida in the end just a bit too much. I mean, there's some of those margins get really thin between the teams, right? This is where it truly comes down to a bounce here, a rebound there. Who touched the last ball there. So I think Florida, in the end, able to just get enough to get over Auburn.
And then you look at Duke and Tennessee. And, you know, I hate what I'm about to say, but I think it's true. Somebody has to be sacrificed to Duke in the Final Four. It has
Yep.
to happen. Tennessee's an amazing team. I think whoever they or Houston gets there, I say sacrificed because they're, you know, I think they're going to lose, obviously. I don't want that to be mistaken as they're going to get blown out. But I think Duke is that good. They are that team this year that they're going to go back to the national championship game.
Yeah, not much disagreement with me. I think Duke's just. I mean, they look like the Duke of old. You know that Duke team that you just kind of grown. It's like these guys again. Why do we got to deal with them? But they're that team, and they've got all the talent, all the tools. I think Duke gets it done. It's Florida Duke International Championship.
Yeah. And I mean, that's going to be an amazing day. That's going to be a great game. I think this could be one of the best national championship games we've seen in a while. But at the end of the day, I think Florida and Duke are about the same level. There's an X factor, and his name is Cooper Flagg. That's why I like Duke to win the national title. I hate saying it. I hate it.
Ooh.
I don't like it at all. But I think Duke is the national champion still. I've not changed my pick from a few weeks ago.
So let me spit some stats at you real quick, Cade.
Okay.
And this is since 2014. So essentially the last decade, if you will,
Okay.
of tournaments. Remember, we did get the 2020 tournament. In 2014, again, being the anchor year that was Kimball Walker's UConn team getting it done. Okay. They were the outlier in almost every sense of the word. I mentioned this stat, first of all, that they were the only team in this span from 2014 through now that had a lower offensive rating than or a higher offensive rating, the defensive rating. Generally, your national champions over the last 10 years have been teams that have a better offensive efficiency than they do defensive efficiency, despite what we said about defensive traveling. But that's just how it's shaken out. So there's your kind of odd stat there. Also, since that 2014 year, every team that has won the national championship outside of that year since then has been at least in the top 3 of the Ken Palm rankings. So we've got 2 teams in Duke and Florida that do have a better offensive rating than they do defensive rating, and they're both in the top 3 of the Ken Palm rankings. You've got arguably probably the best star power in this game that you've seen in a minute when it comes to just dudes that can play ball. I mean, what a stellar matchup this is. At the end of the day, are we in a situation where, for once, for the first time maybe in any of our lifetimes, that the country is rooting for Duke because they don't want to see the SEC dominate everything?
Very well could
Is
be,
that where we're
Tyler.
at?
Very well could
Is
be.
Duke, for the first time, going to be America's sweetheart in this situation?
No, man. What a
That's
world
the
that would
narrative I'm
be.
riding with. I'm curious, man. I'm curious to see how this shakes out. Would everybody be rooting for Florida, or would everybody be rooting for Duke? Or would they just all say, hey, I hope both of them lose? I don't know. But at the end of the day, the NCAA tournament is unique in the sense of what, Kate? The talent, obvious, next level talent, a lot of times can propel you to great heights. You know, we've seen it with the Kimball Walkers of the world, the Steph Currys of the world. You could go through so many of the underdog teams that had just fantastic players. At the end of the day, Duke's got the best player on the court. I'm changing what my pick was in my original bracket. Duke showed me enough. Give me them as your national champion.
There you go. There you go. Welcome to the correct side, I hope. Well, it would be funny though if you change your pick and Florida wins. That would be a great video to come back to.
That
Be
would
like,
be a good. That'd be a good egg in the face there.
that
Like I
would.
can't even get my second chance bracket right.
Folks, as always, if you've made it this far, feel free to like the video, subscribe to the channel, hit that notification bell to always be notified when new videos come out, and feel free to leave a comment down below. You know, tell us what you like, what you didn't like, what you agree with, what you don't agree with, all those fun things there. I apologize if everything looks a little wonky. I know I'm kind of off center here camera wise compared to what I usually am. That's again, like I said, the fun part when OBS crashes 5 minutes before you're supposed to go live. Gotta love technology. But folks, as always, until next time, have a good one, everybody.